Have you ever felt like you're slowly burning out in the rush of life, where everything around you seems designed to trigger an instant reaction from you? A provocative comment on social media, a disapproving look from a coworker, or the invisible pressures of modern life. All of them are screaming for your attention. We're living in a world so loud that finding even a single moment of inner peace feels like a luxury. You react to everything on pure instinct, only to realize at the end of the day that you feel empty and drained. But now, try to imagine a different reality. Picture your mind as steady as a mountain of stone, where the storms outside may roar, but can never shake the stillness within. That is the state of calm in chaos, a powerful inner force that helps you stand firm in the middle of relentless turbulence. Nearly 2,000 years ago, Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful emperor of Rome, a man who held the fate of an entire empire in his hands, yet faced betrayal and endless wars, left us an eternal reminder. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Today, we're not here to talk about running away from reality. We're here to dive deep into the wisdom of Stoic philosophy to learn how to reclaim ultimate control. It's time for you to stop being a slave to circumstances and begin the true journey to control your emotions. Are you ready to discover the power of silence? Welcome to the journey of resetting the order within your inner world. When people mention Stoic philosophy, many often mistake it for a doctrine detached from reality, or imagine it as an ascetic lifestyle where a person must suppress all emotions to become as numb as wood or stone. But in truth, it's the complete opposite. The wisdom of Stoicism doesn't teach us to deny our humanity. It teaches us the highest art of emotional mastery. It is the ability to recognize the storm of emotions as it crashes in. And instead of letting it sweep away your reason, you learn how to stand firm and ride those waves with a calm and grounded mind. In the context of today's turbulent world, these lessons are anything but outdated. They are more urgent than ever. We are living in an era of hyperconnection, yet deeply disconnected from our inner world. Social media, constant news, and the pressure of invisible standards endlessly attack the mind, making inner peace a rare and even luxurious state. Have you noticed how today's society seems to encourage noise and instant reactions? We are taught to speak up immediately, to express an opinion on the spot, and to constantly chase external validation. This pressure has created a generation of people who are easily hurt, who lose their calm over a single negative comment or an event that doesn't go their way. This is exactly where the Stoic mindset becomes a lighthouse in the dark. The core difference between someone who is swept away by life and someone who takes ownership of their fate lies in clearly distinguishing between react versus respond. When you react on impulse, you unknowingly hand the steering wheel of your emotions to others. You become a victim of circumstances. In contrast, when you choose to respond with awareness, you create a powerful space for yourself. And in that space, you realize that silence is power. Silence is not a sign of weakness or submission, but a smart strategy to conserve your energy and observe the world with clarity. In this video, we're not going to walk through empty theories. We're going to peel back the layers of the mind to reach the core of your inner strength. We will explore how Marcus Aurelius, a man who also faced overwhelming chaos, applied these principles to keep his inner throne unshaken. From learning to let go of what lies beyond your control, to training yourself to stay composed in the face of provocation, you will be equipped with a practical toolkit you can apply immediately to your daily life. Our goal is not just to understand, but to live with an entirely new attitude. One where you no longer chase the noise of the world, but instead, the world is compelled to bow before the quiet, commanding stillness within you. To truly feel the weight of these lessons on silence and inner resilience, we need to turn back time to the 2nd century AD and come face to face with the man who forged these truths. When we mention Marcus Aurelius, history doesn't just remember him as one of the great 5 good emperors of the Roman Empire, but also honors him as the most vivid embodiment of Stoic philosophy. However, what makes his wisdom priceless is not the throne he sat on or the power he held, but the harsh reality in which these ideas were born. Marcus Aurelius did not write his reflections from the safety of an ivory tower or in the comfort of a grand library. He wrote them in damp military tents on the northern frontiers, in the bone-chilling cold along the Danube River, and through sleepless nights surrounded by the stench of blood and death from brutal wars against the Germanic tribes. His life was a chain of personal tragedies and national burdens. The Antonine Plague that claimed millions of lives, betrayal from his most trusted generals, and the heartbreaking loss of his wife and children. It was in circumstances where any ordinary person could have collapsed or gone mad that Marcus Aurelius turned to Stoicism as the only anchor to keep his mind from drifting into darkness. The work we now know as Meditations was never something he intended to publish for future generations. In the beginning, it bore the title Ta eis heauton, which means to himself. It was a private journal where the most powerful man in the world disciplined himself every day on how to maintain emotional discipline and seek inner peace in the heart of the storm. Every line he wrote was not empty theory, but a rigorous mental exercise to train a Stoic mindset. He forced himself to look directly at the impermanence of life, to accept what could not be changed, and to focus all his energy on his own character and virtue. Because it was written in the very context of life and death. The teachings of Marcus Aurelius carry an astonishingly practical force. He proved that calm in chaos is not an abstract concept, but a survival skill. He did not search for peace by running away from responsibility or hiding in seclusion. He created peace right in the middle of the battlefield. For Marcus, philosophy was not about glamorous debates. It was medicine for a soul that was bleeding. When we truly understand this tragic and heroic origin, we begin to cherish every principle he left behind. These are not just pieces of advice. They are battle-tested strategies that allowed a human being to stand tall and unbroken in the face of fate's cruelty. And now, we are going to open those pages of his inner journal together and learn how to apply these very strategies to your own life. The very first and most fundamental principle in Marcus Aurelius' system of thought. The key that unlocks the door to inner peace is a complete redefinition of the relationship between you and the external world. We call this principle the shield of stillness, or more specifically, the art of clearly distinguishing between react versus respond. Take a look at your daily life. How many times in a single day is your mood determined by someone else's actions? A driver cutting you off in traffic makes you explode in anger. A tactless comment from a coworker ruins your whole day. Or a message left unseen sends you into anxiety. In behavioral psychology, this state is often described as don't react on cue, don't react on command. Most of us are living like puppets, and the world around us holds thousands of invisible strings. Whenever someone wants to provoke you, they just have to tug one of those strings, and you react exactly as expected. When you allow external factors to automatically trigger your emotions, you are unknowingly handing over the ultimate power of your life to other people. You are no longer the owner of your mental home. You become a careless gatekeeper who lets anyone walk in and tear it apart. The core of Stoic philosophy lies in recognizing the sacred gap between event and reaction. Marcus Aurelius taught that we cannot control what happens to us. Those are objective, indifferent events. But we hold absolute power over how we choose to think and feel about them. This is where you must learn how to control your emotions. Control here does not mean suppressing or denying your feelings. It means you do not let your emotions become the one behind the wheel. When a wave of anger crashes in, instead of immediately lashing out with harsh words or impulsive actions, you create a pause. Within that pause, wisdom takes the throne. Instead of reacting like an animal driven by survival instinct, you choose to respond with the dignity of a human being endowed with reason. A response is the result of conscious choice. A reaction is merely the slave of habit. But the trap of losing control doesn't only come from negative things. There is a more dangerous, more subtle enemy, one that often hides under a sweet disguise. That is the craving for approval. The principle of the shield of stillness demands that you stay sharp enough to recognize this. Praise is a soft trap. Compliments are a soft, seductive snare. We tend to stay on guard against criticism, but we fling our hearts wide open for flattery. Why is this dangerous? Because when you let your self-worth depend on other people's praise, you are also giving them the power to destroy you with their criticism. If you float into the clouds because of one compliment, you will also crash into the abyss because of one negative remark. Marcus Aurelius, even as an emperor worshipped by thousands, constantly reminded himself to be extremely cautious of flattery. He understood that flattery isn't always friendly. In a world full of hidden agendas, flattery is often the most effective manipulation tool. Those who want to control you won't use whips. They will use your own ego to lead you. They stroke your pride, making you believe that you need their validation to feel valuable. And once you become addicted to that emotional drug, you will do anything to keep it, even if it means losing your true self. Therefore, to attain true freedom, you must learn a harsh lesson. Don't seek validation. Do not look for confirmation from the outside. Your worth does not lie in how many people like you, in applause, or in flowery praise. Your worth lies in your character, your integrity, and the inner peace you build for yourself. An emerald does not become less magnificent if no one praises its beauty. And it does not become more beautiful because people worship it. It simply is what it is. And so are you. In summary, this first core principle demands that you build an inner fortress. In that fortress, insults bounce back, and flattery cannot penetrate to hypnotize you. You become a calm observer. When someone tries to provoke you, you look at them and recognize that their anger is their problem, not yours. When someone flatters you, you smile and acknowledge it, but you do not let it define your value. By practicing this separation, you gradually reclaim the strings of control that you have long unknowingly handed over to the world. You begin to stand firm. You begin to feel the power of being unshaken. This is the very first step toward entering the state of calm in chaos, where you are the king of the kingdom of your own mind, untouchable and full of quiet authority. To truly understand the power of stopping your reflex and beginning to respond, we need to step out of the pages of philosophy and walk into real situations, where a person's strength is measured not by how loud they speak, but by the depth of their silence. Imagine a familiar scenario in modern life. You're sitting in a tense meeting. A colleague, perhaps because of personal pressure or jealousy, suddenly turns and attacks your idea with harsh words, even making it personal in front of everyone. In that very moment, your biology kicks in. Your heart starts racing, blood rushes to your face, and a powerful urge rises inside you. You want to slam the table, argue back, prove that they're wrong and you're right. That is the natural reflex, the way we usually let our emotions take control. But now, rewind that exact moment and apply Stoic philosophy. Instead of letting anger explode, you choose to press the pause button. You take a deep breath and look straight at the person shouting at you with a calm gaze. You don't say a word. You hold complete silence for a few seconds. In that silence, something remarkable happens. The other person, who was expecting an argument to dump their emotions onto, suddenly feels thrown off. Your silence is like a wall of cotton. It absorbs all of their punches without returning any force. They begin to feel awkward, start stumbling over their words, and slowly become aware of how ridiculous their behavior looks next to your composure. In that moment, you're not just control your emotions, you're also controlling the situation. When you finally speak, your voice is steady, without hostility. I understand your perspective. We can revisit this when things are calmer. That is the difference between react versus respond. The one who reacts is a slave to circumstances. The one who responds is the master of the moment. You walk out of that meeting with your dignity intact and with a sense of inner peace no one can touch, while the other person is left alone with their own chaos. Now let's widen the lens to another example of the trap of seeking recognition. Something we've already touched on earlier. Think of a young, talented artist. She creates a beautiful piece of work and posts it on social media. Thousands of likes and praise-filled comments pour in. She feels euphoric, feels her self-worth soaring to the skies. But then, the algorithm changes, or the crowd's taste shifts. Her next piece receives almost no attention, and even attracts harsh criticism. Instantly, she falls into depression, doubts her own talent, and feels worthless. This is the price we pay when we seek validation from the outside. Her emotions are riding a roller coaster built on nothing but virtual likes. If she applied the mindset of Marcus Aurelius, that artist would understand. Praise and criticism are just external noise. She creates because of the intrinsic value of art, not because of applause. When praised, she does not become arrogant. When criticized, she does not fall apart. She maintains balance, a sustainable state of calm in chaos. She understands that if she gives the crowd the power to make her happy, she has also handed them the knife to hurt her. To illustrate this principle in the most profound way, nothing is more powerful than the historical story of Marcus Aurelius himself. In the year 175 AD, Avidius Cassius, one of his closest generals, the man Marcus trusted with command over the eastern provinces, betrayed him and declared himself emperor. News of the revolt spread and shook the entire Roman Empire. Everyone expected a storm of rage from Marcus. They anticipated he would order the massacre of the traitor's family and brutally punish those who followed him. But what did Marcus Aurelius do? He showed no panic and no anger. He gathered his troops and spoke to them calmly. He even expressed sorrow not because his throne was threatened, but because a friend had lost his loyalty. He declared that his goal was not revenge, but forgiveness. He said that if Cassius were captured, he wanted to spare his life to show the world that mercy still existed. When Cassius's severed head was brought to him by the assassins, Marcus refused to even look at it and ordered it to be buried with respect. That act of Marcus Aurelius was the pinnacle of emotional mastery. He did not allow betrayal to define who he was. He had the power to slaughter, yet he chose the power of restraint. He lived out his famous words, "The best revenge is not to be like that." Through these examples, From a modern office meeting to an ancient Roman battlefield, we can clearly see one truth. True power doesn't lie in who shouts louder or who receives more praise. Power lies in the ability to stand firm like a lighthouse, letting the waves crash against you without moving you. You don't need to be an emperor to do that. You only need to start with the smallest actions. Staying silent in front of provocation, smiling in the face of baseless criticism, and continuing to walk your own path. That is how you build an inner world that cannot be defeated. After equipping yourself with a solid shield to block impulsive reactions, we now step into the second core principle, a more strategically offensive principle in the art of living, according to Marcus Aurelius. If the first principle helps you protect your inner world, then this one helps you see the outer world with piercing clarity. We call it the eyes of truth, built on the foundation of letting silence speak and observing actions instead of listening to words. In modern society, we often equate silence with weakness, ignorance, or submission. When a debate breaks out, people tend to believe that the person who talks the loudest, the most, and dominates others is the one who wins. But Stoic philosophy completely flips this notion on its head. Marcus Aurelius and the Stoics believed that silence is power. Silence is not an empty, meaningless void. It is a powerful space where wisdom is gathered and truth is revealed. Why is silence so frightening to noisy minds? Because human nature fears uncertainty. When you are silent, you become an unknown variable. The person in front of you doesn't know what you're thinking, doesn't know what you're going to do next, and that makes them lose their composure. In that confusion, they start talking more to fill the void, and in doing so, they expose their true nature. This is the strategy of let silence do the talking. Instead of wasting energy explaining or arguing, you use stillness as a mirror, forcing the other person to confront their own inner chaos. When you maintain complete calm, you not only preserve your energy, you also neutralize their attack, turning silence into a sharp psychological weapon. However, silence is only the launching pad for an even more important skill, the ability to see reality clearly. The world we live in is flooded with promises, beautifully crafted narratives, and polished images on social media. If you only listen to what people say, you will easily get lost in a maze of falsehoods. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself to look into the essence of things, to see past the outer shell of words. The principle here is very clear. Watch what people do, not what they say. Words can be arranged, refined, and even fabricated, but actions are the truest mirror of a person's soul. Someone may speak endlessly about loyalty, but how they behave when you are in trouble is the real answer. Someone may preach kindness, but the way they treat a waiter reveals who they really are. On the journey of cultivating a Stoic mindset, you need to develop a healthy, grounded skepticism. Don't be dazzled by grand plans or dramatic vows. Look at the consistency of someone's behavior over time. Actions are the only language that cannot lie. Focusing on observation instead of just listening will save you from countless disappointments and unnecessary wounds, because you are judging the world based on raw reality, not idealized expectations. To do this, to remain silent, observe, and see through actions, you need a third crucial factor: the ability to slow down. We are living in a culture that worships speed. Faster is automatically assumed to be better. Yet paradoxically, the faster the world spins, the more wisdom demands slowness. The principle slow down when the world speeds up is not laziness. It is deliberate awareness. When everything around you is spinning, when work, pressure, and information come crashing down on you, your natural reflex is to spin along with it. You make rushed decisions, you judge hastily, and you lose clarity. But remember, no one can see their reflection in rushing water. You can only see it when the surface is still. Choosing to slow down helps you step out of the chaotic current of the crowd. It creates the necessary distance for you to assess the situation, analyze other people's motives, and make decisions based on reason instead of emotion. Combine these three elements, using the power of silence, observing real actions, and consciously slowing down, and you will possess the eyes of truth. You will no longer be a victim of fake flattery or meaningless provocations. You become a wise observer, standing above and looking down at the chessboard of life with deep understanding. You are no longer fooled by appearances, and more importantly, you find a sense of inner ease because you know you hold the key to decoding everything happening around you. In the next part, we will explore how to apply this eyes of truth in concrete situations, to see that sometimes doing nothing and simply observing is actually the most powerful action you can take. The theory of observation may sound abstract, but in real life, it appears vivid and razor sharp, like a scalpel cutting through illusion and exposing the truth. Let's break down some everyday situations to see clearly how the eyes of truth operates, and why silence is power is an undeniable principle in the art of communication and human interaction. Imagine you are walking into an important negotiation. It could be a business contract discussion, or simply a conversation to resolve a family conflict. The person sitting across from you is trying to hide some kind of truth, maybe a mistake, financial dishonesty, or a questionable motive. They start talking. They talk a lot, using fancy words and convoluted explanations to cover things up. Your usual instinct will push you to interrupt, to fire off questions, or to argue with each point. But if you do that, you're actually helping them. Your noise gives them room to dodge, redirect, and continue their scripted performance. Instead, you apply the strategy, let silence do the talking. After they finish a long sentence, you don't respond immediately. You keep your gaze steady, look straight at them, and maintain complete silence for 3 to 5 seconds. Do you know what happens in that space? That silence creates enormous psychological pressure. The other person starts to feel uneasy. They begin to wonder, did I slip up? Why aren't they reacting? Do they already know the truth? The discomfort of that stillness forces them to keep talking just to break the suffocating atmosphere. And in their anxious rush to fill the gap, they begin to contradict themselves, stumble, and unintentionally reveal crucial details that they would never have exposed if you had been arguing. In that moment, you realize that the power of silence doesn't lie in what you say, but in how you make the other person reveal the raw truth themselves. Next, let's look at a painful but common example in romantic relationships, where the principle, watch what people do, not what they say, becomes an emotional lifesaver. Think of someone who constantly apologizes. After every time they hurt you, they swear, "I promise I'll change. This is the last time. I really love you and value this relationship." Those words sound so sweet, so full of hope. If you only listen with your ears, you'll believe them and forgive again and again. But someone with a Stoic mindset will act differently. Try muting the movie of your life and watching only the images. When you silence the soundtrack of sweet words, what do you see? You see the same careless behaviors repeating over and over. You see the lack of respect still showing up in their daily actions. You see yesterday's promises evaporating by today. The gap between what they say and what they do is the exact distance of their dishonesty. By focusing entirely on actions, you break free from illusion. You're no longer tormented by the question, if they say they love me, why do they keep hurting me? Because you understand that their actions are the real answer. This truth may hurt, but it liberates you from manipulation and helps you make clear, self-respecting decisions. Finally, imagine a crisis at work to illustrate the principle, slow down when the world speeds up. A sudden problem erupts. The system crashes, clients are furiously complaining, critical data is lost. The whole office is in chaos. People are running around, shouting, firing off panicked emails, and making patchwork decisions just to do something, to calm their anxiety. In that storm, the faster they move, the more mistakes they make, and the worse things get. In the middle of all this, you choose to slow down. While others are running like headless chickens, you sit still for a few minutes. You breathe deeply to bring your heartbeat back to normal. You detach yourself from the contagious fear of the crowd. This deliberate slowing down allows your rational brain to function at its best. You see the big picture that those who are rushing cannot see. You identify the root cause instead of scrambling at the symptoms. When you finally take action, every step you make is grounded and precise. In the end, even though you started later, you solved the problem faster and more thoroughly than everyone else. That is one of life's great paradoxes. Sometimes, the fastest way to reach the finish line is to dare to slow down when the whole world is in a hurry. Through these examples, from negotiation tables, personal relationships, to workplace crises, we can clearly see one thing. Real power does not belong to the loudest or the quickest person. Power belongs to the one who dares to be silent in order to listen. To the one who dares to look at actions to see the truth. And to the one who dares to slow down to maintain calm in chaos. These are vivid demonstrations that the philosophy of Marcus Aurelius is not empty theory, but one of the sharpest, most practical weapons for modern life. Below is the developed content for Part 8. Core Concept, Principle 3+, Definition and Explanation. This section focuses on the art of letting go, walking away, and managing your energy, the highest level skills of someone who truly practices Stoic philosophy. If the first two principles teach you how to stand firm and observe, then this third principle takes you to a higher level of freedom. The power of refusing to participate in battles that are not worth fighting. We call this the power of letting go. This is not cowardice or an escape from responsibility, but the pinnacle of emotional discipline. It is the wisdom to recognize that sometimes the strongest action you can take is not to attack, not to explain, but to turn your back and walk away. In life, we often suffer from a serious psychological disease, the need to have the last word. When we are misunderstood, slandered, or dragged into a pointless argument, our ego screams for justification. We want to explain ourselves at all costs, want the other person to finally get it, want to win the verbal war. But Marcus Aurelius and the Stoic sages saw through the emptiness of this effort. They taught us a harsh yet liberating lesson. Walk away without a word. Why is it so hard to walk away in silence? Because it goes against the ego's instinct to prove itself. But think more deeply. When you try to explain your true self to someone who is already determined to see you in the worst light, you are wasting the most precious resource of your life. Explanations only have value to those who are willing to listen. For those drowning in prejudice and resentment, your words are nothing but fuel on the fire. Choosing to walk away silently, with no accusations and no self-justification, is a powerful declaration of self-worth. It sends a clear message. I value my time and my peace more than I value your understanding of me. This action cuts off the energy supply to the conflict, leaving the other person alone with their bitterness, while you walk away with your serenity intact. This leads us to a crucial financial concept in the inner world. Budget your emotional energy. Imagine your emotions as a bank account with a limited balance each day. Every time you get angry, every time you worry, every time you argue, you're withdrawing from that account. Our biggest mistake as humans is that we spend this emotional capital carelessly on cheap things. We pay an outrageously high price, our peace for the whole day, just to gain a few minutes of venting at a stranger on the street, or to win a pointless argument on social media. Someone with a Stoic mindset is a seasoned emotional investor. Before reacting to anything, they always ask themselves, is this worth the price of my inner peace? If the answer is no, they refuse to pay. They don't allow petty situations to drain their energy. Practicing this emotional budgeting helps you save your strength for what truly matters: your life's purpose, your loved ones, and your own growth. You become stingy with trivial drama, but generous with meaningful joy. Beyond managing your personal energy, the principle of letting go also teaches us how to deal with other people's chaos. Have you ever tried to jump in and fix someone's mess, only to get dragged down into it yourself? This is the savior complex that many people suffer from. Stoic philosophy offers a cold but clear piece of advice. Let chaos collapse on its own. There are storms, drama, and conflicts created by people's toxicity that you cannot and should not try to fix. When you rush in to help in a burning wreckage, you're often just feeding the flames with more oxygen. Sometimes, the best way to help others and protect yourself is to step aside. Let natural consequences play out. Let the chaos collapse under its own weight. When you refuse to participate, the troublemakers lose their audience, lose their scapegoat, and are forced to face the reality they created. This letting go of control is not indifference. It is respect for cause and effect. Finally, a subtle dimension of letting go is releasing the urge for immediate revenge. When we're hurt, our instinct is to watch justice fall like a hammer right then and there. We want the wrongdoer to pay instantly in front of our eyes. But don't chase instant justice. The obsession with seeing fairness executed on your timeline often leads to impulsive decisions, mistakes, and an extended chain of suffering. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that the universe has its own rhythm. Justice does not always appear as a lightning bolt striking the wrongdoer on the spot. Sometimes, justice is that person being forced to live with their own conscience, or slowly collapsing under the weight of their own habits and character flaws. When you are consumed with punishing someone, you are chaining yourself to them. You allow the past to haunt your present. Letting go of the urge to take revenge, letting go of the need to play judge and executioner, frees you from the burden of hatred. You begin to understand that the sweetest revenge is to live a life that is happy, strong, and completely unaffected by what they did to you. In summary, this third principle is a lesson in true maturity. It is the ability of letting go. Letting go of the need to explain, letting go of wasting energy, letting go of controlling other people's chaos, and letting go of the urge to punish. When you master this art, you'll feel an almost strange lightness. You walk through life like a free traveler, carrying no unnecessary luggage, unburdened by the rocks scattered along the roadside. You pour all your focus into the road ahead. And that is when you reach the ultimate power of a mind that cannot be imprisoned. The theory of letting go may sound light as a feather, but in reality, practicing it can feel as heavy as 1,000 pounds. To deeply understand how someone can walk away silently in the middle of a storm of conflict, let's step into real-life scenes, where the strength of a Stoic mindset is tested in the harshest ways. Let's start with a financial metaphor to illustrate the principle, budget your emotional energy. Imagine that every morning when you wake up, you are given a capital of 100 units of energy. This is the only capital you have to spend on work, creativity, love, and enjoying life. You step outside and encounter a reckless driver who cuts you off. If you lose your temper, honk furiously and chase them just to yell, you've just thrown away 20 units. When you arrive at the office, you run into a coworker who loves to gossip, someone who always tries to pull you into useless drama. If you sit down and join in on that conversation, you spend another 30 units. By late afternoon, you receive an unreasonable reprimand email from your boss, and you spend the whole evening stewing in anger and resentment. You've burned through the rest of your capital. The result? When you finally come home to your family, you are empty, exhausted, and irritable. You are emotionally bankrupt. Someone who practices emotional discipline lives in a completely different way. When they're cut off in traffic, they recognize that anger doesn't change the fact that the car is already gone. So they choose to keep those 20 units. When a coworker tries to drag them into gossip, they smile, decline, and return to their work, preserving 30 more units. At the end of the day, they still have plenty of energy left for their loved ones and their personal passions. They are spiritually wealthy not because they have no problems, but because they refuse to spend energy on things that bring no return. This is the art of managing the budget of your life. Next, let's look at the power of let chaos collapse on its own, through the story of how toxic conflicts eventually implode. Imagine you're in a relationship, whether friendship or romance, with someone who has a narcissistic personality. These people feed on attention and conflict. They deliberately provoke you, make baseless accusations, or create fake emergencies just to force you to react, explain, and beg. That's their fuel. The usual response is that we rush into that fire to put it out, trying to clarify, defend ourselves, and fix the situation. But the more we do that, the bigger the fire grows. The wisest action here is to apply the principle of strategic withdrawal. You stop supplying oxygen to the flames. When they provoke, you don't react. When they create drama, you stay on the outside and observe. You let their chaos unfold inside an empty room with no audience. Eventually, with no one to interact with, that chaos turns inward and consumes the very person who created it. You stand at a distance, safe and calm, fully aware that it is not your responsibility to rescue those who only want to drag you underwater. Finally, let's talk about the hardest example of all. Facing injustice without seeking revenge, the principle, don't chase instant justice. Think of a diligent employee who is unfairly fired, or someone whose work is blatantly stolen by a colleague. The bitterness rises and sticks in their throat. Their instinct is to blow everything up, to write long expose posts on social media, to sue, to demand justice right now. But very often, that frantic pursuit of instant justice turns the victim into a resentful, angry person who loses sight of future opportunities. Someone with a Stoic mindset will choose another path. They hurt, yes, but they choose letting go. They understand that the time and energy spent on revenge would be far better invested in rebuilding their life. They choose to pack up their things and walk away silently. They use that pain as fuel to build an even more brilliant career. 5 years later, they've become an exceptional leader, living happily and successfully. Meanwhile, the person who stole their credit is still stuck playing the same old games, with a reputation fading away under the weight of their own incompetence. At that point, justice has been served in the most complete way. The sweetest revenge is not to harm your enemy, but to live a life so good that their existence no longer has any meaning to you. Through these examples, we can clearly see a profound truth. Sometimes, the bravest act is not charging into battle with your sword raised, but laying the sword down and walking toward the sunlight. Your silence as you walk away is not cowardice. It is the roar of an inner world that has found calm in chaos. You are not running away from life. You are simply refusing to participate in petty games so you can save your strength for far greater battles. That is the choice of a truly free human being. We've just walked together through a long journey exploring the deepest layers of Stoic philosophy. We've come to understand that silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of wisdom, and that mastering your emotions doesn't mean killing your human sensitivity, but directing it with reason. However, all of these lofty ideas will remain nothing more than dead words on a page if they are not transformed into breath, into habits, and into reflexes in your daily life. Marcus Aurelius did not become a wise emperor just by reading. He became great because he practiced relentlessly, every day, in cold tents, in physical pain, and under crushing political pressure. So the real question is, how can a modern human being, living in a maze of social media, work deadlines, bills to pay, and complicated relationships, apply this ancient wisdom? How do you maintain inner peace when your phone buzzes every few seconds and the outside world is constantly trying to knock you off balance? This section is the detailed answer, the action map for you to start building your own inner empire from today. We begin with one of the most counterintuitive strategies in our era, the art of hiding yourself, also known as the principle, hide your hunger. In a world that glorifies showing off, where every goal, every meal, and every tiny achievement is posted online for applause, keeping your ambitions secret almost sounds insane. Yet this is one of the most powerful self-control techniques. Modern psychology has shown that when you talk about your goals too early, like, I'm going to start a business, I'm going to lose 20 pounds, or I'm going to write a book, your brain gets an early hit of dopamine, a false sense of satisfaction, as if you've already achieved it. That fake feeling of completion actually lowers your drive to do the real work. On top of that, exposing your hunger makes you a target for scrutiny, doubt, and even subtle sabotage from those who don't want to see you succeed. Applying the Stoic mindset here requires you to become a kind of submarine. Act in silence. Nurture your ambitions in the dark, where no one sees your struggle, your doubts, or your sleepless nights. Let your results be the only thing that makes noise. When you learn to hide your hunger, you redirect all your energy into action instead of wasting it on explaining yourself or seeking approval. Silence becomes a pressure chamber, turning coal into diamond. You'll find yourself working more effectively, more focused, and more powerfully when you're no longer burdened by the need to prove to the crowd what you're doing. Next, to maintain calm in chaos, you need to equip yourself with a psychological armor before stepping out of your house each morning. That is the technique of negative rehearsal, or in other words, accept what could go wrong. Many people mistake this for pessimism, but in reality, this is the peak of preparedness. Every morning, instead of simply wishing for a good day, spend 5 minutes visualizing what might go wrong. Tell yourself, today, I might get stuck in traffic. My boss might scold me unfairly. I might run into a rude client. My computer might crash. Imagining these worst-case scenarios is not to make you scared, but to strip adversity of its most powerful weapon, surprise. When you've already accepted that things can go off track, then when something actually goes wrong, you won't panic. You'll smile and think, right, I was expecting this. Your mind already has a response plan. Instead of being shocked and reacting impulsively, you remain coldly calm and handle the problem. This is the secret of emotional mastery. While others are screaming and blaming each other when a crisis hits, you stand firm like a rock, because you've already lived through that crisis in your mind. You turn setbacks into training grounds for resilience, not excuses for suffering. But mental preparation alone is not enough. You need tools you can use on the battlefield of emotion in real time. That's where the 3-second rule comes in. Your switch from react versus respond. In daily life, the gap between being triggered and reacting is often extremely short. Sometimes just a split second. When someone insults you, blood rushes to your head and your mouth is ready to fire back with poison. This is the moment you must intervene. Set a non-negotiable rule for yourself. Never respond immediately. Count silently. 1, 2, 3, or take a deep breath. That tiny pause has the power to change your fate. It interrupts the reflex of your amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for fear and anger, and activates your prefrontal cortex, the center of reason and logic. In those 3 seconds, ask yourself, if I say this, will things get better or worse? Is this worth trading my inner peace for today? Most of the time, after 3 seconds, the wild surge of anger drops and clarity steps in. You'll choose to stay silent, or you'll choose to say something calm but sharp. Practicing this technique hundreds, thousands of times will forge a steel-like emotional discipline. You stop being the person everyone can push a button on. You become the one who controls the entire game. Let's expand this into your work and social life, where the principles silence is power and don't seek validation must be applied ruthlessly. In the workplace, we often get pulled into an invisible race for recognition and status. We want our boss to praise us, want our colleagues to respect us. But remember, praise is a soft trap. When you work just to hear compliments, you become a slave to other people's evaluation. Change the way you think. Do your job well for your standards, for your integrity, not for applause. In meetings, practice speaking less and listening more. Don't try to dominate just to sound smart. Listen, observe, analyze, and only speak when what you say truly adds value. You'll be surprised how often the quietest person in the room carries the most weight when they finally speak. On social media, learn to walk away silently from toxic debates. Don't try to be the internet police correcting every stranger's opinion. That is one of the most wasteful uses of your energy. When you see misinformation or a provocative comment, just scroll past. Your act of ignoring is the highest form of contempt and the best way to protect your mind. Use that energy to read a book, learn a new skill, or take care of yourself. And most importantly, don't forget your evening ritual, reflection. Just as Marcus Aurelius wrote meditations every night, you too need time to sit down with yourself. Before going to bed, turn off all devices, sit in silence, and replay the movie of your day. Ask yourself, where did I lose my temper today? Why did that person's words hurt me so much? How could I have handled that situation better? Don't judge yourself harshly. Observe like a neutral witness. This nightly review helps you extract lessons and reset your mind for tomorrow. If you fail to control your anger today, it's okay. Forgive yourself and commit to doing better tomorrow. Stoic philosophy is not a destination of perfection. It is a journey of continuous improvement. Finally, to weave all of this into a complete way of living, you need to build what we can call a Stoic filter. Before you process any piece of information, any event, any invitation, run it through this filter with one question. Is this within my control? If the answer is no, for example, the weather, traffic jams, other people's thoughts, the past, global economic crises, then practice letting go. Accept it as a natural part of life and don't let it disturb your mind. If the answer is yes, for example, my attitude, my words, my actions, how I choose to see this, then focus all your strength on handling it as well as you can. This simple classification will free you from 90% of the invisible burdens you're carrying. You'll stop worrying about what others think of you because you don't control their thoughts. You'll stop tormenting yourself over past mistakes because you can't change them. You become lighter, freer, and full of energy to live fully in the present. Applying these principles is not easy. There will be days you fail. There will be moments when you want to scream, to strike back, to give up. That's normal. Emotional mastery is like building muscle. It takes time, pain, and consistent repetition. But trust this. Every time you choose silence over arguing, calm over panic, letting go over clinging, you are laying another solid brick in the fortress of your character. Gradually, you'll notice the change. You'll find yourself less easily hurt. You'll see people's motives more clearly. You'll feel a deep, quiet peace seeping into your soul, a kind of inner peace that no amount of money can buy. You will become the person others want to lean on when the storms hit, because they see in you the steadiness of a mountain. That is the most worthy reward for anyone brave enough to walk this path. You are not just studying philosophy, you are living it. You are becoming the best, strongest, and wisest version of yourself. And this world, with all its chaos, will have no choice but to bow in respect before the silent, unshakable power within you. At this point, some of you may be wondering, does staying silent and constantly controlling our reactions make us cold, distant, or even emotionally numb to life? If we apply these principles strictly, do we risk turning into stoic machines that don't feel pain, don't get angry, and passively accept everything? That concern is completely understandable. However, we need to clearly distinguish between two completely different inner states. There is a dangerous misunderstanding that stoic people are those who have no emotions. That is simply not true. Marcus Aurelius wept when he lost those he loved. He felt crushing loneliness. He felt anger in the face of betrayal. He did not deny his humanity. The key lies in a golden principle. Calm isn't numb, it's mastery. Calm is not the paralysis of emotion. It doesn't mean you stand there like a block of stone when attacked, or that you become indifferent to the suffering of the world. On the contrary, it is the highest state of awareness. You still feel the fire of anger blazing in your chest. You still feel the sting when you're insulted. But instead of letting those emotions seize the steering wheel and control your actions, you use your will to tame them. The difference lies in the power of choice. A numb person feels nothing because they've frozen their heart to escape pain. But a person with emotional mastery feels everything, deeply, yet has the courage and strength to choose the response that best aligns with their dignity. That is not negative suppression. It is the transformation of energy. When you choose to remain silent in front of someone who provokes you, it's not because you are afraid or incapable of anger. It's because you understand that your silence can be more devastating and more instructive than any outburst. So never confuse calm with weakness. To keep a cool head while your heart is burning requires far more inner strength than simply letting your emotions explode. It is the journey from being a slave to your impulses to becoming the king of your own mind. And that is the true destination of freedom. We've just walked together through a long journey, exploring the deepest corners of the mind, from recognizing the invisible strings that pull at your emotions, to practicing the art of silence, to learning how to let go of what was never truly yours. Hopefully, through the stories of Marcus Aurelius and the wisdom of Stoic philosophy, you've come to realize that inner peace is not some luxurious gift reserved only for saints. It is a state completely within your reach, if you are brave enough to reclaim control. Remember this: the world out there will never stop being loud. There will always be rude people, unfair situations, and unexpected upheavals. You cannot change the direction of the wind, but you can always adjust your sails. You cannot stop the waves, but you can learn to ride them with the posture of someone who is in command. Don't wait until everything around you becomes perfect before you allow yourself to feel at peace. Learn to find stillness in the very heart of the storm, because that is the only kind of peace that truly lasts. Starting today, I invite you to try just one small change. Next time you face provocation, don't react right away. Take a deep breath, take one mental step back, and ask yourself, is this really worth trading my peace for? Remember the greatest lesson we've explored. You don't have to win every argument to prove you're right. Sometimes, the greatest victory is your ability to control your emotions and walk away with a quiet smile. Don't let the harshness of life harden your heart. And don't let the bad behavior of others turn you into a bitter person. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself on his loneliest nights, the best revenge is not to be like that. The sweetest revenge, the strongest form of self-affirmation, is to live a life that is bright, happy, and kind, no matter what you've been through. Let your silence be your shield, and your wisdom be your sword. Live like a rock standing in a rushing river, so that every crashing wave breaks into foam and disappears, while you remain there, steady, grounded, and at peace. Thank you for listening, and may you find your strength in the stillness within yourself.